Welcome back to Charging Stack, where we talk to the people building what cities will actually run on. Today we're joined with Alexandre Simonis, co-founder of Mobi Coop, the team behind Mobi One, an electric utility vehicle designed for short city trips, practical cargo, and everyday use. Mobi One sits in between categories, a more stable and practical than a cargo bike for starting work, but far less heavy and space hungry than a car. Alexander, great to have you with us today on Charge Attack.
Hi, Marin.
Great.
Thanks a lot for having me, and nice to talk to you about our project.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Likewise. Let's kick things off from the very beginning. What was the original problem you saw that pushed you to start Mobi Coop? Some kind of original frustration?
Yeah, well, I think basically it's the kind of personal experience a lot of founders may have experienced when they were commuting within the city. For my part, it was when I was living in Liège, and I used to bike just to go do my groceries and so on when I was in the city. But yeah, it kind of I was kind of always feeling stuck and not really having all the practical aspects I could have. So, just to put the groceries on the bike, just leaving it somewhere safe without being afraid that might get stolen, this kind of thing, or just getting around when it was raining or cold and so on. And I mean, that was fine until some point, but then I also felt some day insecure. I was just driving around and then I got really close to a bus. But the streets are kind of narrow. It's not always easy for this kind of vehicle to see you when you're driving. And I was like, okay, nearly got crushed by a bus. And I mean, it was not his fault. I'm pretty sure he didn't see me. And I was like, okay, I don't feel safe doing that anymore. And is there something that we can do to change that? I want to be able to move around the city, but I don't want to use my car. Okay, the bike is maybe not for me, but for other people it's fine. But for me, it's not so fine. So that's maybe the starting point, I think, of all the reflection about the project. And it was almost like 5-6 years ago now. There have been a lot of pivots. I was thinking, can we have small electric cars as a fleet and so on that can be shared on some of the city? And it evolved, and I was trying to find other people with the same kind of feeling, same kind of problems. As part of a study that I made, it turns out that actually there are a lot of people who have this kind of feelings as well for the city centers. And not only private persons, but also companies and businesses who have to work around the city. And that was the turning point, I think, when we decided to say, okay, there's maybe something to start, maybe to even think from scratch how we can have this reflection about moving around the city. And basically, that's how the current project was born about 3 years ago now. And then it was just evolving, trying to discuss with all these businesses, which is in the end our primary target. I will come back to that later on in the podcast, I think. But yeah, that's when we were able to pinpoint the pains and how to address them, and basically how we got to the point where we are today.
So basically, you realized that the real issue isn't more bikes or better bikes or more EVs, but something maybe in the middle that's missing currently, something that's not on the streets right now.
Yeah, exactly. And like, if I can share some of the pains that we had from the potential early adopters, the customer that we have, and we had some of them who had tried already to make the shifts from cars or vans to bikes or cargo bikes for their operation. But then what we got is that, Wallonia is kind of a hilly landscape, so it's not always flat, a lot of rain and so on. And these guys, sometimes operators have to carry some heavy loads. And so that one of the company told us, yeah, we bought 9 e-bikes, but like 6 of them are staying in the garage, are not being used because the operators still prefer to use the van or the car just to go around the city because it's too demanding as an effort, or because the conditions are not so good with the weather and so on. And so, like, if we thought, yeah, it's a missed opportunity. You need to do something else. We have also other examples of companies who are still using cars and vans in the daily operation. But then, for example, in the city of Liège, some of them are touring with just a few envelopes or just a few soups for people to eat for 1 hour. They need 1 hour to make the delivery. It makes no sense. These kind of companies are really interested in a new kind of mobility. Basically, what they have is they also have operators who are not always comfortable with using the bikes, as they still prefer to have some kind of protection, some kind of feeling of safety around them, of stability. And that's how, I think we can propose something in the middle that doesn't exist yet.
Yeah, definitely an awesome story. We've actually heard here on Charging Stack for a few times. Now, as you said, when you started to look, are there any more people who have the same problems? You found a lot, and so did we. So we see that this kind of middle layer is something that's new and emerging right now. Maybe another question: why, when we talk about Mobi Coop, why go cooperative, and what does that change about how you build and how you sell?
Yeah. The idea behind the cooperative company, so just to explain in a few words, so you have the traditional company and the cooperative company. We have people who are actually the shareholders of the company. So anyone can come and say, okay, I want to buy a share of your company, basically. But then the idea and the philosophy behind it is also that you build something together. So it's not just your company going with money from the shareholders. You have a community of people and ambassadors who can help you in growing your company and are sharing the same values. So that was something which was important for us as part of the ideology and where we want to go and how we want to go there from the start. And it really allowed us in the first, let's say, couple of years to get going, actually. So we had some financing through that, which allowed us to build, let's say, the first demonstrator, to get known, to get some credibility, to be able to get some kind of space, public space, so that people and companies started to know us. And so, yeah, that was definitely the purpose of this cooperative company, to really have a strong community and ambassadors of the project who could help us make it known around us. But then actually another downside, and that's where we are, I think, in a part of a transition, is that financially it's also companies who don't have a lot of, let's say, return on investment, who are allowed even by law. So it's difficult to be able to incentive investors to join these kind of companies. And we are at a point where we will need much more capital to be able to go through the industrialization, homologation, and commercialization phase. And at some point, we'll need to make the pivot to a more traditional company where we can still propose interesting return on investment for these investors. But it doesn't change the fact that we have the values, the mindset, and that we are still completely aligned with what we had first when we started the cooperative company.
Yeah, I
Perfect.
mean,
That's
it totally makes sense. The route you're taking and the philosophy you're building, it's kind of unique. I must say, I haven't met any founder so far that said, well, let's go fully cooperative because we can onboard great people and, have them as brand ambassadors. So I think that's cool. That's very cool what you're doing. I love the
Thanks.
philosophy. I really do.
And I think it's necessary because you need to, we are talking about new products, so something people are not used to, and you need some ambassadors to make it shine and show it on the streets and around you, because you always need to have some first movers who are willing to do these, let's say, innovator steps and pioneer steps. And it's important to have this kind of community on which you can rely on and on which you can build your project.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes total sense. And as you said, you showed in the early stages where you weren't like a corporal, let's say, you showed your initiative, you showed that you are, you're going to be a good leader, let's say. So for all the investors, I think it's a very, very fertile ground. I want to talk about your product, about, yeah, Mobi One. So let's say for our listeners, if you had to explain Mobi One, let's say in under a minute, what would you say?
Yeah, so in fact, it's an electric vehicle, so fully electric, kind of a moped, which can allow you to basically move around the city freely without much of the constraint you can have with congestion, with parking issues, and so on. With the fully enclosed capacity of like a car, let's say, even if it's not a car, and we specify it very firmly, it's like a scooter, a moped, and with access to bike lanes, so which is make it very convenient, especially in Belgium where it's allowed to avoid all this traffic and to be able to move directly and as fast as possible to your customers or to do your business, so you don't lose time and money with just commuting. And also it makes sense on a financial point of view because we are talking about a small light electric vehicle, so it means much less charges and fees just to take care of it for operating conditions, operating costs, and so on. So basically, that's what we propose as an alternative in between cars and bikes.
Okay, so you said that your vehicle falls under the moped category, right? For current EU standards. So it's not an L7, it's not an L6, it's not
No,
an e-bike.
no,
It's a, so you're the first one on our show actually in the moped category,
We had
which
a
is very
new
interesting how you
had an
can.
old. Yeah, I'm sorry. I just remember we had a company that is building a moped. An
I
interesting.
know.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, it's a Soul Motors. They call it Noped because it's an electric bike but has no pedals.
Oh, yeah,
Y-
yeah.
It's a notepad, no pedals. Yeah. So yeah, very interesting category. It's so interesting how you can create so many uh different vehicles that serve similar purpose, but also you can maneuver with the categories. You can maneuver around how you're gonna fit your vehicle in the market and under certain laws. Let's say, who is your ideal customer, your default user? Who is Mobi One designed for? An individual, a small business, or a fleet? Multiple, of these categories. What would you say?
Yeah, for the first customer that we target, we are really on the, let's say, on the B2B segment of the market for companies basically who need to do intervention within the city, so just to move a lot within the city. Just for example, network operators and managers who need to do some technical work on their grid. You also have medical logistics, but more related, to the kind of things you can have with blood samples, deliveries, and bringing them back to labs to do
Mm-hmm.
analysis and so on. You
Very
also have
interesting.
some small businesses and independent persons who need to move around the city to go to people's house, people doing daycare, home care. Also, you can think about people doing for like real estate, moving around the city to visit the building and so on. So this is the kind of profile that we are targeting first with this kind of product, because we think it makes more sense for them to move with this kind of lighter vehicle than with cars. And I think even them don't move so much with cars because it's really complicated. Just on a side note, on the logistic aspect, so we tried also to explore that, but realized that for them, what's really important is the lowest cost for the biggest volume. And it was not so much our intent in the first place, and also to be realistic with the cost and the production cost we will have at first. We can come back to that later as well. But yeah, we know that if we want to be able to have a product which is appealing to this kind of businesses, then we have to propose this kind of added value that they don't find in the other vehicles. But that being said, the idea is that the product can evolve. And for the moment, as you mentioned, it's a utility vehicle for a one-seater. We still with some space in the trunk, so you have 200 liters of space you can use to put bags, tools, whatever. But the idea is that if we make the product evolve for, let's say, a more B2C segment, then we can develop the product so that you can make a two-seater, so you can bring your kids to school, these kind of things, and that you can, you can also start to think about not car sharing, but let's say Mobi sharing services within the city, where you can put units in front of train station, bus station, and so on. And yeah, of course, leasing as part of company options. For the moment, car leasing is a very, very big advantage that companies here in Belgium propose to their employees. And the fiscal advantages are quite huge, actually, for the moment for these kind of cars. The idea, and I think the mindset is evolving to try to favor more this kind of lighter mobility for the moment. So we already have some incentives which are more favorable for bikes. And from what we've seen going on and what the European Commission is saying, we will see more of this kind of incentive for intermediate vehicles coming as well.
Yeah, perfect. I'm still thinking about the thing you said about blood samples and healthcare industry. That's something that we maybe haven't seen at all. But I'm thinking, of course, like ambulance vehicles are so chunky, so big. They can get stuck in the traffic if they're transporting, as you said, blood samples, some kind of equipment from hospital to hospital, clinic to clinic. Sounds like a very interesting industry that could be explored, and many others that you also mentioned. And yeah, as we can see on your webpage, the vehicle current prototype is also foldable, right?
Yeah,
It
correct.
very
Absolutely.
how the front goes inside. Maybe you can explain kind of the technology behind that, and the intent in doing some.
Yes, so one of the main points that we pinned out when we were doing let's say, the analysis of what were the pains the customers had with bikes and cars, this kind of aspect of protection against theft and vandalism was one of the main points. And the idea of to have this kind of cocoon, of this kind of whole shelter around the vehicle when it's parked somewhere, preventing all the, let's say, essential components such as the batteries, the motors to be damaged or stolen. That was one of the points we thought about. And we also noticed that parking space is really an important point not only to the user but also for the cities to be able to reduce the footprint of the vehicles to a minimum is something which is going to be very important in the years, decades to come from what we discussed about and what we see. And so the idea that you have this kind of small vehicle, compact vehicle that you can even put inside a building. And so the idea is that when it's folded, you can still maneuver it with the motor inside and steer it. So you can put it inside a building. You can even put it inside of a lift to move it around the different floors. So what was the first, let's say, most obvious reason for the folding aspect that makes sense. And then we also realized that we can do more with that, and it will come with all the practices, I think, and the use of the people. You can also, as I mentioned, if you want to put this kind of vehicle at some point for sharing in front of a bus station or train station, then it makes more sense to have them all stacked in a small volume where you can easily pick up one of them and leave it somewhere else in the city without taking more space and so on. In terms of operation, also, it's much more easy for logistics. If you want to deliver them somewhere, if you want to just move them around for repair or maintenance, it makes a lot of sense for even some businesses. Some even told us, I can put that inside my truck and go into the city and then do the last mile within the city walls with this kind of vehicle. So why not? I mean, it's a possibility. You can do it. Some also, it's just something we try to explore in the longer term when the vehicle will be lighter, more, let's say, adapted for private users. The idea is that you can also at some point take it on a train or a tram. You just go to another city. If you want to go from Liège to Brussels or to Berlin, you can take it with you on the train, and then you can keep living there with your vehicle. Why not? So this is the kind of options that we want to put to make available to people and see how far they can go with this kind of new utility and function.
Very cool, very cool. You're definitely, pioneering this. I think we've seen foldable, but this is so cool. You can bring it with yourself, pretty much under your arm. It sounds like that, but it's an actual moped. But yeah, super, super interesting, and yeah,
Yeah.
very good thing initiative.
Yeah, it's great how it's so space friendly. Like, if you have a B2B fleet that has 30 Mobis, they take so little space. It's so cool. And the fact that you can, enter the lift, that you can go on a train, insane. Like this is so insane.
Yeah, and actually the lift test, you already did it in Liège. So once we had a small exhibit last year, and we had to go on the upper floor, and we were able to put it on the lift. It was easy.
So, I mean, it's easy to see that you are prioritizing the space, the cargo practicality maybe. But let's say if you would have to choose between stability, the cargo load, the comfort, safety, and affordability, what do you think would be the biggest one for you?
For the moment, from what we target, it's mainly comfort, stability, and security. Because for the cargo space, as I mentioned, if you want really to go into the cargo moving space business, you need really large volumes and so on. So that's why what we target is to have. We already have a possibility to attach a trailer to the vehicle if you need, so you can have more than 1 cubic meter if you need at the back. But really, the vehicle, we want it to be as agile and versatile as possible in itself, and we want to make it comfortable. We want you to feel at ease inside. Yeah, I mentioned the cocoon for the protection against theft and vandalism, but once you're inside, we want you to feel peaceful, comfortable, feel safe, because you are visible from the rest of the traffic and the other commuters. That's why we made it not, some velomobiles are kind of low um, relative to the ground. So here we are sitting at basically your eyesight is at 1.5 meter height, so it's basically the same as the car. So the car see you if you need to go on the street, so you can move around and be visible. That was very important for us. And the practicality and the fact that it can be agile, that it can move basically like a cargo bike. The idea is that we took the dimensions of what you can see on the cargo bikes market proposals, and be able to have this kind of same vehicle with the same kind of agility, the same kind of turning radius, so that you can move around bike lanes. And because I mentioned in Belgium, we can access bike lanes with this kind of moped, and so that was important for us too.
Yeah, it seemed like you found the sweet spot, between the between these categories. Just a question, because we briefly touched on this. What would you say Mobi One replaces most often in your plans? What's it meant to replace? A second car, a van trip, a cargo bike, or simply just walking?
For us, so for our first customers, so the businesses within city, let's say within city walls, it's definitely the fleet of cars and vans. To some extent, I mean, we don't say that we will replace all of them. From what we gather from all the discussions we have, there is a potential to replace between 10 to 20% of the fleet of cars and vans for these kind of companies. Not all of them, of course, but it's still a significant part, which can represent a significant operational gain in terms of cost and so on, in terms of time. So that's, let's say, the first kind of benefit we can offer. But then also for the let's say the B2C customers in the long term, more in that case to rural areas, it would be indeed the second car. And we also want to work with car sharing companies because we think we can have this kind of mindset building up where you have, this kind of small vehicle, maybe you own it or you share it. But then if you need to make a longer trip, with more than two persons, with your family, for example, go on vacation for the weekend or whatever, then you rent the car. You don't need to actually own it, especially if you live in the city, because you have many offers to have cars coming or cars available right next to your door. So we think this kind of mentality shift or evolution can take place, needs actually to take place within the coming years. And that's what we want to progressively introduce into to the mind of the people and show that it's possible to maybe change your mobility habits to something which is more sustainable, but which is still very practical and maybe even more practical than what you can have today.
Yeah, it's definitely seems sustainable when we talk about the energy consumption and how it actually drives. Yeah, it's definitely something we see missing in city centers. Like in some city centers, we can see that the diesel cars are banned and the petrol cars are banned, and only EVs can drive. I think it's in Budapest. EVs get a blue license plate, and only cars with blue license plate, hence EVs, can
Mhm.
enter the city centers. I think this is a kind of a middle ground that is lacking in basically any city in Europe. Yeah, this is something super new, and I'm glad we have the chance to talk to you. You know, at this moment when all the entire industry is only in the build phase. Like it's not yet super mega multi-trillion dollar industry, but it's gonna be. So could you
Yeah, we are
could
really at the starting point, and I mean, you already had a lot of other interviews with companies from France and other countries, and you see that this kind of community is working toward building this kind of new mobility, and
yes.
it's really actually exciting, and there is all of them are relevant into their own middle environment, and that's very exciting. And I think it's also participate to the fact that seeing all these new businesses or solutions coming up also give to the customers and users, not the guarantee, but let's say the opinion that something it's relevant. It's not just some guy who is thinking, crazy guy, crazy engineers who are doing some crazy stuff. It's something which is making sense and more sense. And so that's a positive signal I think we see from all the community from the different countries. Yeah, EV cars is already the first good transition that we need to make, I believe, compared to thermal engines. But a car is still a car, and so it still takes a lot of space within the city walls. It's not really necessary if you are just commuting alone. So moving some of the part of the traffic, as I said, maybe 10 to 20%, but it's already good because you can then reduce the pressure the traffic can exert on the city and make them more breathable. That's the whole point of this kind of projects, I think.
And one thing I'd like to add is what we have noticed is there is no traditional competition. Like you're not competing with your fellow industry players, but you're competing against the old way. Like you're competing against a totally different industry. So this is a kind of a unique position. So when whoever we talk to, they say they're not competing with anyone, but with the old way of doing things. And I think this is the beauty of it, something that's really unique for this industry and this moment we're in. And yeah, the the way this is being handled, and the way this industry is evolving, and how your solution fits into it is really something that's, how to say it, it's so satisfying to see. I think that's maybe the, yeah, that's satisfying to
Yeah,
see.
it's, I think the complementarity of it is quite interesting because you have all these kind of solutions being developed. You have you mentioned the L7, the L6 categories where you have vehicles who can go up to 80, 90 kilometers per hour, who are more dedicated to rural environments. You have us who are really focused on city environment, accessing bike lanes, especially in Belgium where it's possible. All these projects have their specificities and can respond to very specific problem that the consumer or the end user can face. And so having the choice is important because then you can really select what is relevant for you and for your business or for your daily use. And the fact that you have all these options coming up, I think that's the good point and the advantage of what we can, actually our assets compared to what we have from the old industry, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
Yes, I wanted to, as we talked before the show, um, we're gonna be in Lyon on Salon du Roi. But and to, it is primarily a two-wheeler event, but there's going to be a, as we call it, new mobility aspect of the whole show. And where it is driving emotion, your, let's say, your colleague, your French colleague, same as Eero. I want to ask you what, I mean, I still don't know how the emotion and Eero feel, but how would you describe, Mobi Coop? How does he, Mobi One? How does he, feel for, you had definitely people, outside your company testing it, trying it out. What do people
Mhm.
say when they drive it?
It's kind of a special feeling because it's not like a moped or a scooter because you don't lean within the turns as you can see or in other project like Emotion. And it doesn't feel like a car either because you're in a small space moving into small spaces. It's more like, if I would have to describe it, more like still different because like on a quad maybe because you are sitting, you're not moving, you're just steering really the feeling. It's kind of yeah, it's kind of a mix between a quad and a kart. So it's kind of fun because you have this feeling of speed of moving, and yeah, you feel really enclosed into your cabin and so on, so comfortable. So I think that it's the kind of the point. It needs to be fun.
So what kind of battery powertrain we're talking about? So how quick is or the future options are going to be? What are we talking? Battery size wise and the powertrain.
I don't know if I mentioned it already, but the speed we are for the moment limited at 25 kilometers per hour. And that's part of the whole point of the respecting the legislation here in Belgium to be able to access bike lanes. So in the European category L2E, you can go up to 45 kilometers per hour. But that's maybe for the future, but not for the moment. And so related to that, we are allowed, and that's what we have, to have a power of 4 kilowatts, which is also relevant for the businesses as mentioned. So sometimes you need to carry some heavy loads going uphill. And so with this kind of power, it's easy to move and to keep your speed, even going slopes to 10 to 15%. So that's one of the interesting points about it. The battery, for the moment, we are using a lightweight battery, so roughly 10 kilograms, but which is swappable. So the idea is that you can easily put it plug and play. And when you have one in the vehicle, you can charge another one, or you can take one or two or three with you if
Yeah,
you want to
perfect.
make a longer trip. That's the idea. Each battery is 1.5 kilowatt hour. So it basically gives you a range of, depending again of the terrain, let's say I would say 30 to 40 kilometers. And so that's usually sufficient for the businesses we talk to for, let's say, doing a commute in the morning, going back to the base, switching the battery and then doing the afternoon shift. So that's very convenient and it's very easy. And I think we will stick to that with the serial product, with the lightweight batteries. You can just easily plug and play. You can bring them home and charge them home if you want to. That's the whole point and the idea.
Okay, very interesting. Okay, so you said feels like a very fun to drive. Feels like a quad bike, let's say, for someone who hasn't driven it. So we have a battery of 30 to 40 kilometers per range, swappable. It sounds like a very good, deal for, as we said, all the targeted, parts of the markets. Is there something you have learned, I mean, you're still learning because you're still test driving the prototype, something you've learned the hard way when, developing the vehicle, let's say for the daily use.
You mean so more on the technical aspect, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, well, from what I think we've learned the the hard way, and we are still learning, is what is really hard is suspension, because
Uh-huh.
we have a tricycle, and so it's really hard to be able to balance the leaning effect you can have when you are turning, as well as the comfort you can have riding bumps, and amortizing the whole thing. And so we started with independent suspension for the rear wheels, and now we are starting to think, okay, maybe we need to put some I don't know, we say it in English, but anti-roll bars and these kind of things, so that once you are turning, you can stabilize more the vehicle in turns. But I mean, it's still part of the process of the development, and it's not something which is really critical because we can redistribute the mass to a lower level. We can stabilize another way. So it's just the current technical point that we are experiencing the most, let's say, from which we learn the most for the moment. But I mean, it's all part of the challenge and part of the fun as well.
Yeah, very, very, very cool. Very cool. And I guess that the whole process is definitely thorough. You change a lot of things, you mix and match, you go back to something that used to work before, but you try something new. So it's definitely, yeah, testing hardware, definitely not easy, but very
Yeah, it's
exciting.
and it's iterative. I mean, I don't know what the other projects said about themselves, but even from from what you design on the computer, from what you calculate, from your analysis and calculations, still different from what you feel or what you experience in the real world. So you
Mhm.
still need to make this kind of iterative process, and that's part of the whole point of the prototype we have now. It's to be able to drive it and to learn as much as possible from what we didn't see from the computer the design or from the calculation to improve it even more for the next phase.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
So I'd like to ask a few questions just about regulations and that bike lane reality. We touched briefly. So could you maybe tell our listeners what is Mobi One legally today and in Belgium, and what does that allow Mobi One to do in practice?
Yeah, for sure. So, as I mentioned, for the European legislation, we are in the L2E category, and so the moped category. And in Belgium, and I think to some extent also in the Netherlands and Denmark, you have the distinction between the speed of the moped. So, between 25 kilometers per hour and 45 kilometers per hour. And so, we are in the 25 kilometers per hour category. As I mentioned, we want it that way. And in Belgium, for example, you have the possibility, actually, it's not a possibility, you are legally obliged to drive on the bike lanes when you have one with this kind of light electric vehicle. And so that's part of the whole point. That's what we want to do, and what we want to address with the project is that we want to use as much as possible, the cycling infrastructures which are developing in the country to release the pressure on the traffic on the road, so that you also feel more safe and go faster once you are commuting around the city. But the idea is not, of course, to take the place from the bikes. It's not to make the bikes feel unsafe or to be dangerous for them. So that's also something we work a lot on, to make sure that if we are close to a bike, they can steal in front of us, that we are not blocking the view, that it's easy for them to overtake us and so on. But the whole point is, yeah, to be able to use as much as possible this infrastructure so that the public, let's say authorities, can invest more into this kind of infrastructure, because from what we see is that if you want authorities to invest in infrastructure, you need to create the need first. So if you don't have anybody using the bike lanes, they will not invest much more into the bike lanes. And to
Yeah.
progressively shift and to take much more space on the road, where actually I think we belong at some point, so that we have, every kind of traffic is separated on its kind of lane. So you have the pedestrians, we have the walkways who are safe, you have the bike lanes, where you have the bikes, you have the small intermediate lanes where you can have the kind of vehicles that we have now, and then you can have the cars, the buses, and so on. So we really want to participate into that progressive shifting and separation of the different kind of vehicles. I think that's part of the important things we want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So what you're aiming to take? You're aiming to how to say it? utilize as much of cycling infrastructure as possible, and that's maybe the reason why you're going for the L2E category. So let's
Yeah,
say you
nice. Sorry.
say in a hypothetical situation, you've expanded to 10 countries in Europe. Since we know how European regulations work and it differs from country to country, what's your strategy? How to, since the rules are fragmented, how do you adapt?
Yeah, the idea is to start with, let's say, Belgium and Netherlands and Denmark. Let's say with Belgium first. We believe indeed that there will be some kind of evolution within the other countries. So, for example, I forgot to mention, but we are developing this vehicle without pedals because we can do it in Belgium. But for France, you will never see a project like us because they cannot drive on the bike lanes with this kind of mopeds. They need to put pedals. That's why you see a lot of pedal in all the French projects. But we believe at some point we can have this kind of evolution for the legislation in each country, which will be more favorable to this kind of vehicle as a whole. But really specifically for us, the first point and the first part is that we want our company to be profitable from the Belgian market already alone. So we are not in this kind of strategy where we need to, let's say, to make a product which will be a mass market product where we need to sell thousands of them to be able to live. We really want to focus as much as possible on the profitability of the product at first. And that's the whole way it has been designed and the whole way it has been thought is that we can reduce as much as possible the production costs and the maintenance costs so that we can offer something which can be competitive from its own and which can be profitable for us as well.
So I wanted to ask you regarding, let's say, hypothetically, if you had a, let's say, 1,000 unit demand tomorrow, what changes in the company in the company tomorrow? How would you organize manufacturing? What are some of your plans regarding all that? Like, for example, we know when we talk to Emotion, they're going to be using Renault factories, some Renault facilities out, pretty much factories. So what would you say in your case?
The way we built the product, I mean, our company is an integrator company. So we don't build anything from our own. What we do is that we subcontract all the manufacturing
Yeah.
processes and we do the final assembly and the final integration of all the systems and parts and components. So actually it's kind of easy to scale because we just need a small spot, a small factory, small assembly factory with very little tooling and very little space to be able to assemble them. So it's kind of easy to imagine. And the idea is that we need to also to be close to the customers because we want to also do the repair and the maintenance of the vehicle in the first place. So we need to be close to our customers. And the idea is to have this kind of small business units you can develop in all the cities where you are located, taking a lot small space. And it's kind of easy to replicate, and that's the point and all the whole idea behind our industrialization process, which we still need to go through. I mean, we are still in the prototyping phase, I will mention. So we already have all these ideas, we have all this plan and how the supply chain would work, but we are not yet to the point where we've been able to actually prove it. Indeed, but that's the whole point and the whole idea, how we want to do it, if that
And
answers the question.
yeah. I mean, it's so you do kind of follow the similar pattern that all others in your segment are doing. So as you said, subcontracting, not doing anything yourself in your own facilities, which then creates a better chance for you to scale pretty much at the end. And as you said, you being in a prototype phase, still a lot of things can change, but you do have a very good basis, very good, let's say, not a start, but you have a base that's works from
Yeah,
what I've
and we've
heard.
done it for the prototype. I mean, so that's how we worked. We gather all the parts together, and I mean, it worked without much problem. The vehicle can be assembled with even one person alone with the small toolbox can assemble it. That's the point
Perfect.
of the whole low tech and low cost vehicle. And that's the idea. It's very easy to assemble, to maintain, to replace parts, and so on.
Perfect. Perfect. Very good. And let's say when we talk about selling the actual vehicle, what would your strategy be selling the vehicle? Would it be some kind of a, direct purchase leasing, subscription, fleet contracts? What would, be something that you would focus on?
Again, for the first customers we target, so B2B, it would be the direct sale of the product, but with some incentives on the maintenance program and all the, making the vehicle work with some service level agreements also on the fact that if something goes down, you have a replacement part of replacement vehicle. so that you are not impacted too much when you're operating it. That's part of the service that we want to offer, but it's basically on the front part a direct sale to the business consumers in the first place. And once we will evolve to let's say more B2C segment, then we can also think about selling it to leasing companies. But for that, we already had contacts, so they need to see the vehicle first. They need to see the maintenance chain and have the security and the guarantee that you can operate this chain before they invest in your solution. And then, as I mentioned, we can also put in place some not cars, but Mobi sharing service within the cities. But again, that's kind of intensive in terms of investment you need to make, and also in terms of resources you need to have people to take care of the fleet and so on. So for us to scale and to be, as I mentioned, profitable in the first place, selling directly the vehicle in the first place is the more relevant.
Yes. Also regarding, okay, when we talk selling, we have to talk pricing and kind of market placement. So where would you place your product? What kind of a price range? What would you market it as some kind of a, let's say, a luxury, budget-friendly option, something in the middle? What would you say?
Definitely not luxury. That's not the point. We want to make it as affordable as possible to anyone in the long run. But we, and I think that's what all the other companies you talk to mention. It's difficult to be competitive with the first price of this kind of vehicle and go low to what you would target in the first place. So from the estimates we have today, the range would be between 7,500 to 12,500, depending on the options you want on the vehicle, on the volume you would command. This kind of things all play a role in an effect on the price for the start. But once we can scale the production and the story, then we can
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
course reduce this price. And if we want to get to go to the B2C segment, I think at some point we need to be closer to the 5,000 to 7,000 euros if you want to be something which is interesting for end users. You already see Citroën Amis for 8 to 9,000 euros. It's not the same case, and it's not the same kind of application, not the same kind of business. But yeah, in the mind of the people, they will
It
always think,
is.
I can have a car for 8 to 9,000 euros. So why would I buy something? But we are in the segment in the price range of let's say e-cargo bikes from the upper end. So you have urban arrows and this kind of thing, which costs basically this kind of pricing. So we want to be in the same price range than them to be relevant for companies to think about our kind of solution as well.
And also, like, yeah, you getting closer to those cargo e-bikes, but maybe we haven't mentioned about that. But also, okay, there's a huge safety factor when it comes to your vehicle because you are, surrounded by a chassis. You are literally behind a wheel. You are not exposed to everything. Again, it's a you are going to be potentially in the same price category, but you do offer much more relaxed driving experience. You're not biking, pedaling. You're not sitting. You're not, in that space. You're relaxed. You're sitting, but you're still very agile, but also very, very.
Yeah, that's true. Exactly. That's this. We are speaking here about the buying price, but then if you look at the operating costs, that's where you have the real advantage and the real gain. You are 4 to 5 times, let's say, less expensive to operate than a van or larger cars. That's also very relevant for the businesses because that's what they will be looking at in the long term, and that's what really makes sense. So the TCO is really the whole point and the whole let's say level on which we want to act.
So let's one more time focus on who are the real competitors. Are those cargo bikes? Are those minivans? How would you classify them? Are they all competitors, or who would be a direct competitor if there is even anyone in your category?
I think from the customer point of view, the competitors would be, and again, it depends on how they are thinking, but for the ones who already have cars and vans, it will be compared to cars and vans and to electric vehicles and so on. And you have a lot of, for the moment, that's what we see, a lot of companies who are investing and transforming the fleet to EVs, and because they have a lot of incentives for that point of view from the government. And so on that level, we have some kind of unfair advantage given to the car compared to this kind of lighter solution that we offer. And so here we are directly in competition with these cars, but because they are incented more than what we can offer for the moment. But then you have also those who are looking for, we have people who already have invested in or using cargo bikes, as I mentioned, but we are really using them, and they will be more comparing to let's say to a cargo bike. So on that prospect, we still need, as I mentioned, to be in the price range which is relevant for them. It will really all in the end depend on what we can offer and what we see as an advantage which was not mentioned yet for our solution compared to e-bikes. You have companies doing, for example, courier delivery, post delivery. They are trying to employ a lot of e-bikes, e-cargo bikes to make this delivery. What they face is absenteeism from the drivers, because usually it's let's say a small, let's say a small job offer, so we don't have much comfort and so on. So as soon as there is something which is not right, like the weather, if it's cold, or if they have to make too much efforts, these drivers sometimes just don't show up, and so these companies need to still deliver the packages and so on, and they are obliged to shift back to a van or to whatever. And so proposing this extra comfort to the drivers and this extra security is also something which can make sense to this company already using, let's say, cargo bikes. But that's something very important. We don't want people to shift from bikes to our solution. The idea is really to shift from cars to our solution, because those who are
Yes.
already using bikes are in the right spot from our perspective. They are doing they have done the right transition, and so it's really not the point of what we want to do. We really want them to keep using e-bikes if they can.
Yes, 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 yeah, I agree. And it's a really good point about what you said, bad weather, workers not showing up. This is also what you get from a car feel, from a car like experience. So, okay, we have to say, yes, bikes are amazing, e-bikes, everything that's, open space. But once you have a chassis around you, once you have windows, it is a different feeling, of course. It's a totally different thing. That's why brands, to me, Mobi Coop, like Emotion, are super appealing, but it's because they're combining the best from the both worlds, and and
Yeah,
and,
it's
it- and
true.
it should be like that.
Yeah,
How
and
would you
what we
say?
see also is sorry.
Sorry, continue. No
No, I
worries.
was going to say also from these kind of advantages compared to cars, we don't need a driver license to be able to ride, and compared to bikes, we are stable because we have free wheels. So all these advantages play at some point on the kind of solution you want to propose to your employees or to your personnel.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, of course. Definitely the adoption curve is shorter when it comes to a lot more people can jump on, can work with those vehicles. Employees can employ more people, which is tremendous. Students can work. So what would you say? So this is a difficult question. I don't want to cause anxiety with this question. What would you say a project like in this industry, which is still brand new, which is still, iffy, still, exploring what is going to work, where are we taking the industry? What would you say? What separate the winners, the current winners, from projects that stall? Is it purely the funding? Let's say a lack of funding. Is it regulation? Is it a price? Is it some kind of environment that the product is being placed? Do you even have an answer to this question? Maybe, as a lot of investors are watching our show, what would you say, to kind of reassure us all, okay, we are on a great path?
Yeah, I think what's really important is the ecosystem that you build around your product. It's not just
Mhm.
the hardware product that we are building. Obviously, that's what we are talking about today, because that's the first step we need to do to be able to showcase it, to test it, and to go to the next phases. But what we really want to build is an ecosystem around it. So as I mentioned, we want it to be used in partnership with car sharing companies. We want it to be proposed as part of a leasing fleet and so on. And so what we need to build at some point is really these kind of hubs within the city centers where we operate these vehicles for the maintenance, for the service we can propose around it. And that's and the relations we can have with other companies to make the maintenance and so on. So that's really the kind of network, the kind of ecosystem you need to build around your projects. And if you just go the road with the vehicle and do not propose anything more than that. I think that's where you can have some kind of problem. And you mentioned legislation is important, of course. Funding can be very important as well, but I think can be also not a drawback, but can put you at some difficulty if you think too soon to make a big scaling. And that's really part of our whole philosophy. We need to be profitable before we want to scale. And that's very
Mm-hmm.
important. We don't want to sell thousands of them if we are not profitable. We want to be first profitable before we go to the next phase, which is to scale and make it available into even more cities, more countries, and so on.
I think that's a common mistake. I think it's a pattern when they have a hardware company and they get a funding, but they start acting like a software company, which usually scales before they're profitable because they're investing so much money in technology. But especially in this industry, in this niche industry, definitely, I think it's a right approach what you're doing because it is a gradual it's you're not jumping in the market with some solution that's not fully developed, that doesn't have a customer base, it doesn't have it has a hype but doesn't have a real use case. That's why I think you're doing a great job.
That's why we need to validate first the use cases, and then we can think about more use cases and more businesses we can address it to. Then we can go to professional to personal segments and so on. And the whole idea of profitability, that's why the vehicle is so, kind of facetized. It's because it's very simple parts, as little parts as possible, as much as possible parts coming from the market. So we don't do as much as possible in-house components and custom components. So that's part of the whole philosophy we want to build with this kind of product. If we, for example, let's say, I talked about the suspension, we take suspension from existing companies, so it can be Piaggio, it can be Peugeot, whatever. We don't need to redevelop the suspension on our own or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that aspect is also super important. Maybe just kind of, we are kind of hitting the 1 hour mark, kind of
Yeah,
getting, to the closing part of this awesome podcast. I want to talk, let's say next, we kind of briefly touched on it, but if you have some kind of a roadmap, next 12 to 18 months, so let's say, year and a half, what are your plans? Where
I
do you
can
hope to
already
be?
even break it down to the, sorry?
And where do you want to be in those 18 months?
Well, we want to be in the market, that's the answer in short.
Yeah.
But I can even break it down even further. So the next 6 months will be actually the most determining for us, because that's where we will actually validate the product market fit. So the idea is that we have the prototype. Okay, it's not yet homologated, so we cannot put people to drive it around the city. We can drive it around the city, but at least we can validate with the customers the potential customers we already have, that
Hmm.
we can answer the needs with the product and they want to see more of it. That's what we need really to validate in the next 6 months, so that we can build commitments and from them that we can show to the investors to back up us for the next step after these 6 months. And for let's say then the 12 months after that, it will be all industrialization and homologation, but also building this ecosystem I was talking about. So we will have a better idea of where we will start operating and building the vehicles. So we will be working also on starting this kind of small hubs I mentioned, to be able to operate them where they will be actually driving.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so commercial, yeah,
Well,
to by the end of these 18 months, it will be the commercialization of the vehicle.
we wish you all the luck in that process. I'm not even concerned. It sounds like you got it all under control. It sounds like you have a very good, very clear, stable plan and great technology to back it up. To close the show, we do a segment called lightning round questions, where we ask a simple question and you give us even simpler answer. So yeah, so the first one would be the most misunderstood thing about replacing short car trips.
The most misunderstood thing, I believe that's what we say. It's not we will replace all car trips. We will offer a complementary solution to a business, to operation where it makes more sense. It's not a downgrade solution. It's not you don't have to lose something. You only have to gain something. You have to gain time on your operation and gain time of your operating costs. That's what we want the future consumer to understand.
And so people probably go, "Oh, you want to delete cars off the road?" No, we just want to add something that's just gonna then improve the whole experience of driving on the roads and the sidewalks. Yeah.
Exactly.
The next question would be one city policy that would instantly unlock adoption in your case.
City policy, I think there could be several. Really related to cities. I mean, it would be access to bus lanes or this kind of thing, or to some more access to limited one ways. That's something we have in Belgium, and they've all been marked for bikes. But again, it's the same for scooters. So legally, you are not allowed to go on some of them because you don't have the symbol of the
Mhm.
moped.
Mhm.
Practically, it doesn't make any difference compared to the bike. So I think that would be something which on the city level would be helpful to some point, in addition to be able to access some dedicated infrastructure, of course. And then on the, let's say, more government level, even if it's not part of the question, that would be the incentives and the fiscal and the advantages that we have to cars are unfair to other kind of mobility and smaller mobility developing. So even at the national level or at the European level, something should be done to propose more incentives on that prospect, or at least
Yeah.
something fair compared to peers.
Yeah, well, definitely as a EU, we have definitely started strong, but now it's kind of, I think, stagnating. I don't. Yeah, it's definitely the budget is being rebalanced, and I hope it goes more into this part segment of the industry, which is because it's very very needed. Is there a one metric? So developing your product, one metric you obsess over?
Metrics will be obsessed over, but for I think it will be the number of kilometers that we will be able to ride with our testing in the first place, and to validate that these kilometers have been useful and have been able for the test we will the demonstration we will do, validate the fact that you can gain time and gain reduce your costs on these kind of operations. That will be the most important for us.
Understood. And the last one, what is the biggest threat to this category? Regulation, pricing, infrastructure change. What would be the biggest threat? The biggest,
I think it could be legislation. I mean, infrastructure change. I think it can only be benefit.
Mhm.
From what I see, it's going in the right way. So I hope that's good. From a legislative point of view, I've seen some countries or whatever going backwards with more strict regulations for some of the mopeds
Mhm.
or for some other kind of vehicle or even bikes and so on. And I don't think that's the right move. I think you need
Mhm.
to put more in positive incentives and more
Absolutely.
make them more useful, more relevant to use on a daily basis. That's what I think is the most dangerous. Hopefully, in the future, it will go in the right way. But yeah, difficult to confirm now.
Difficult to confirm, but yeah, I do agree with you, and I do hope those things change, and I think we need to develop some kind of a even though all the countries, okay, we talk about EU are different, okay, but we do share the similar, okay, our city centers, most of them are old, are narrower than all the countries on the far west and also on the east. So we need some kind of a there has to be a pattern that we can apply to all these cities that can work in general and then have some kind of smaller tweaks. But let's not complicate, let's not overcomplicate, regulate it, because then we're slowing the whole adoption. So I hope
Exactly.
I hope someone's listening to this and
I hope to.
some change can happen.
Perfect summary.
Yes. Alex, this was amazing. Thank you so much for coming
Thanks a
to
lot,
our
Martin.
show. That huge, congrats to everything you've achieved so far. And, your whole team. Definitely, Mobi One, your prototype is a strong reminder that a lot of urban mobility progress, comes from a smaller, slower, but way more practical vehicles that fit, actual the real trips. And yeah, we wish you all the luck. This has been Charging Stack, and we'll keep sharing the great news. Thank you once more, Alex.
Thanks a lot for having us on Charging Stack, Marine. Bye bye.